Welcome to our trash revolution.
I'm so upset. Oh my God.
The guy!
Welcome to the Young Turks. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur. Our co-host today is someone that is new to the program. So I want to introduce you guys. It's Sabrina Salvati. She's the host of the SabbySabs podcast. Welcome, Sabrina. How you doing?
Hello. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. Look, we got a lot of great stories I'll get to in a second, but tell us a little bit about the SabbySabs podcast. What's it about? And give the audience a rough sense of where you think you are in the political spectrum.
So my show covers domestic and foreign policy from a left perspective. I myself am a registered no party affiliate. I came from the Bernie Sanders movement. I've been strongly encouraging people to get independent candidates out there. That is one of my big goals, to try to get a slate of independent candidates in Congress. And I know it's very challenging, obviously, because of the way the two-party system is structured. And I also employ people to try to see what we can do locally as well. So I'm an organizer, I'm a podcaster, and many other things.
All right, I like it. And we're trying to give everybody a wide variety of opinions here. We've gone everywhere from Joe Kent, Marjorie Taylor Greene, to David Sirota, Glenn Greenwald, Sabby, and tomorrow John Kiriakou is going to join us. So, all right, so let's get started then. We got a lot of amazing stories. First one starts with a doozy. Down goes AIPAC, down goes AIPAC. So you might not have noticed from all of the mainstream media celebrations of Francesca Hong losing in Wisconsin, but AIPAC actually got devastated again in elections last night, mainly in Minnesota. So we had Flanagan, who was a progressive candidate and was the lieutenant governor in Minnesota, running for Senate against Angie Craig. Now, Angie Craig was mainly funded by AIPAC, and whenever they lose, the mainstream media, of course, all of a sudden goes radio silent. I said, not a big deal, not a big deal, okay? Everybody serve AIPAC, but remember, AIPAC has no power. So how much did she get? Let's take a look. Here's Angie's profile there on Track AIPAC, $710,000. But that race is over, and Flanagan won by a lot, around 20 points. So, and Angie Craig, to her credit, then immediately endorsed Flanagan, so that's good. And Flanagan said this: Craig was only Minnesota Democrat to send 2,000-pound bombs to Netanyahu and has had an incredible amount of support from AIPAC. They've been her biggest funder throughout her entire political career. My values do not align with AIPAC. I'm not taking their money, and I think that this matters when it comes to how we engage in foreign policy. I show you that statement from Peggy Flanagan from before the race was called, because I want you to see what a factor that was in the race. She ran against AIPAC and won super comfortably. And it's a beautiful day in America. And then you see our candidates on the left being smeared by mainstream media 24/7. Oh, they're gonna cancel Thanksgiving and they're gonna release all the prisoners. So, for example, did Flanagan run on any of that? No, this is what she ran on.
This election is about a fundamental choice in who our government serves, the many or the money. And right now, too many families are being crushed because it's corporations and billionaires who are calling the shots and leaving working families to foot the bill. It's the child care payment that costs more than your mortgage, a check engine light that forces you to decide which bill can wait, a trip to the doctor that you're putting off, or quietly asking your child to put something back on the shelf because you don't have enough money in your account. All across Minnesota, people are working hard. They're budgeting, sacrificing, taking care of their families, and doing everything right, and yet they're still falling behind. Life shouldn't be this hard, and it doesn't have to be this way, but it is because somebody benefits from it being this way. And it's not you, and it's not me.
So I wanted to show you that because I wanted you guys to see what they're actually running on. They're running on real life issues related to you. They're running against corruption. They're saying, why don't we spend the money at home instead of fighting wars for other nations? And that is why they're winning very comfortably. That is why mainstream media has to throw out 1,000 flares to distract you and try to get you to hate progressives. And look, whether you're on the right or the left, you have to concede mainstream media has attacked every progressive candidate and attacked none of the insiders, the ones that claim to be objective. And one more race in Minnesota that was important, and that's Matt Little's race. So he was trying to replace Angie Craig, so that way we'd get a progressive who beats her in the Senate race, and then her seat in the House would get picked up by a progressive if Little wins. So now we go to drop site news coverage again on that race. In a three-way race, one candidate, Matt Klein, was unapologetically supportive of Israel, while two others, Matt Little and Kayla Berg, have been critics to varying degrees. Given the numbers, the path to victory for Klein was clear. He needed Little to be brought down by boosting Berg, splitting the vote between the two progressives, and needed big money to get himself past both of them. So what did AIPAC do? They not only gave to Klein, but they surreptitiously gave to Berg as well to try to knock out Little. Now we don't know if Berg asked for that money, to be fair to her, but bottom line is AIPAC funded those two. And how did it turn out? Little crushed them. So down goes AIPAC in yet another race. So Sabby, let me bring you in here because to me, the giant headline from yesterday, and we'll get to Francesca Hong in Wisconsin in a second, but the giant headline should be AIPAC defeated again. And no matter how much they spend, they keep losing and losing. But instead, we've got wall-to-wall mainstream media coverage of, the left wing lost. They lost in Wisconsin. They're losers and failures from the objective press. So what do you make of all this?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I think that after Thomas Massey's race, I think that AIPAC felt as though they were teaching candidates a lesson that if you are not pro-Israel, we are going to throw every dollar that we have against you, and this will teach you a lesson. But it doesn't seem to be working, and I think this message that is happening right now, more and more people are moving away from this type of lobby interest money. And more people do want our money spent right here at home. And all of this focus that's on Israel, more Americans have moved away from that. But what it goes to show you, these races that we saw today, and of course the ones the week before, is that you can beat the money if you are strategic. You can beat the money if you have an excellent ground game, and that you shouldn't look as though I cannot beat this because they're pouring all this money at you. Now, it does make it more difficult, yes, indeed, but you can beat that money. And ultimately, what I would say to people is that this needs to be studied. People need to look at what those candidates who were able to beat the large dollars against AIPAC, what it was that they did on the ground. What strategy did they use to combat millions of dollars that came into these races?
Yeah, and part of that goes to the statement I'm about to read from Matt Little, which is very similar to what Flanagan said in the video, but I want you to pay attention to each of the policies. He said, we need generational change and strong progressive leaders. You're here on that. If we're bold and brave, we can pass Medicare for all. Now, I'll pause there to say that polls at 65%. Universal childcare, that polls, I think, at over 80%. A wealth tax, I think that polls at around 76%. A moratorium on data centers, I think that might poll at over 90%. And we need to overturn Citizens United, that polls at over 90%. And get dark money out of our politics, same 90%. Let's win this thing. So now, if you turn on cable television or you read the New York Times, did you get a sense that Matt Little and Flanagan and all the progressive candidates have enormously popular issues that they're running on? No. Instead, you got that it's like Thanksgiving. They're gonna take the stuffing right out of your mouth, these monsters, right? So which brings us to how they covered Francesca Hong. So she was running for governor in Wisconsin, And she is to the left of me, and she is DSA. I'm not DSA, and she did have some of these positions earlier, and she, had a late, statements about pulling them back. So look, part of it could, and she barely lost, just so you know, 39.81 to 39.33 with 98% reporting, good enough to be called. But by the way, that's close enough that you could ask for a recount. And so. Well, Politico asked me, I said, this is kind of a hilarious thing to quote yourself, but she says she got clobbered. I said she got clobbered by national media, and which is unquestionably true. Didn't respond as deftly as Abdul and didn't have enough time to build a counter narrative. The negative publicity for the last 2 weeks seems to have taken its toll. Hassan Piker said electability in the primaries and harm reduction in the general still carries lots of boomers when it's paired with a barrage of negative earned media, plus no defensive TV ads, plus no national progressive endorsements. All in all, an unbelievably impressive showing for a DSA Wisconsin ground game. So, and of course, the mainstream media's reaction was the exact opposite. Axios had the headline, "Socialist fever breaks. Take away from Crowley's win." Crowley's the one that defeated Hong. So I'll get to more hysterical reaction in a second. But let me bring Sabby back in. So Sabby, there's a lot of topics here to discuss. One, I could say, hey, listen, I told you guys not to run on these super unpopular positions, like, or not to even have them, like abolishing prisons and defunding police, et cetera, right? But I don't do that. I actually think, hey, you know what? We all should have gotten together and said, that's not her main promises at all. She's not even promising that, let alone prioritizing it. She's prioritizing universal child care, et cetera. And I don't know that I did enough to help her, but I do know that very prominent people like Bernie Sanders and AOC chose not to endorse her, and that created doubt. And that, I mean, just a smidge less doubt, and she probably wins. So I am curious, and I don't know what your take is. So what's your take on all of that?
I did hear from some of the residents in Wisconsin about this race. I put a call out for people to contact me and tell me what they saw happen on the ground. And there's a number of things. The big one, the current governor choosing to basically anoint David Crowley made a big impact on voters. Constantly telling voters that she was not going to be able to win in the general election. Them hearing that over and over and over again, that created doubt. And so they thought that not necessarily so much that all of these people were against her policies, but more so that they really felt as though they were convinced by the current governor that she could not win in the general election. We saw something similar to this in 2020 and 2016 with Bernie Sanders, where I heard people say that on the ground as well. They were convinced by the media that he could not win against Donald Trump. So they voted for Hillary or they voted for Biden. So a similar situation that I heard from people on the ground happened here. You mentioned TV ads. Another one that was brought up to me, I did ask people, did you see any TV ads? Some people reached out to me and they said they saw one or two. Some people said they didn't see any. So what that tells me is that if there were TV ads, they weren't as frequent. Little statistic here for people to understand. When you're talking about a network television, I did look this up. So about 32 to 36% of Americans are watching or subscribe to cable network television. During that time, about 72% of that are ads. So it is very important to have television ads and to show them frequently. I live in Massachusetts. I can't tell you how many I've seen so far for Seth Moulton, who is running against Ed Markey. They're on repeat. So that really does make a big difference, especially for the voters that are over the age of 65. They tend to watch network television, not as much of the streaming platforms or are on social media as much as like a lot of us, right? So that does make a difference. And then ultimately, I think a big part of it is, some people apparently, I was told, were turned off about the comment that she made about Thanksgiving. But I think the big key thing here is when the current governor is anointing one of the candidates and says, this is the person that you should support, well, then it's kind of hard to beat that in a sense.
So Sabby, I want to get into which ones you think are more important, but I don't know your position on these abolishing prisons and defund police, et cetera. So what's your take on that? What's your position on it, and how harmful do you think those policies might be or not?
So I support defunding the police. I've had debates with people on my show about this before in the past. But what has been very clear to me is apparently when I have this conversation with a lot of older voters, they do not support defund the police. They're turned off by it. Garland Nixon and I had a debate about this a long time ago, and he said the fact that you have to explain to me what it really means, that should send a sign to people, right? And I said, well, defund means to defund. It means to remove the funding and to put those funds into community programs. But I have noticed that a lot of older voters are turned off by it. So I think that does turn some voters off. I personally think that she should have, just stuck by what she said. I am starting to see some of these candidates start to backtrack on tweets that they had from years ago. I mean, we have a president in the White House right now that has said insane things and is doing insane things. Nobody's asking him to take back his statements. So this is where I think that these candidates and just Democrat politicians in general, they have to have a little bit more gusto to stand on what they said before and sound like they have some type of conviction, if that makes sense. I know some people are really disappointed about this race in particular, but what I would say to people is that, I see electoral politics as one tool in the toolbox. There are other tools that need to be utilized. And I always encourage people to do, mutual aid, to run these ballot measures. If you live in a ballot initiative state, there are other things that we can do on our end to get some of these policies implemented, at least on the local level. And I have seen that happen in states like mine, like Massachusetts. So I think we should never put all of our hope or energy into a candidate, and we should always look at what we can do as well.
Yeah, so I think that some things are super clear. Like they always have a money advantage, the other side, and that's huge. And anytime you can't overcome their overwhelming money advantage, then media piles on and goes, "Oh, you were not a good enough candidate." We'll come back to the media, but that stuff is relatively clear. We just talked about some of the far left positions, and I'm glad to see that people are coming around to, yeah, it's not electorally helpful. And then we could have debates about if it's the right thing to do or not. But obviously the candidates are withdrawing from them. But I actually do agree with Sabby that whatever you decide to do, you're gonna retract, you're gonna double down, do it strong, right? Don't be too apologetic and say, look, this is what I'm gonna prioritize, this is what I'm gonna run on, and run with strength, even if I don't agree with you. So on whichever issues. So, and look, why do I support Francesca Hong, even though I don't agree with some of those social issues that she's was in favor of? Well, because I don't want to do nothing Democrat and I don't want to do nothing Republican. At least she was going to try to prioritize some of the things we do agree on, whether it was childcare, raising the minimum wage, and all the other progressive policies that are very, very popular. And so before I get to the media, one last thing, Sabby, on the relative importance of these factors. So what's your take on the no endorsements and how much of a difference? I mean, to be fair, Our Revolution endorsed, Progressive Democrats of America endorsed. Ro Khanna was the only legislator, as far as I know, who endorsed. And it's interesting because Ro Khanna is not as far left as Francesca is. AOC and Bernie kind of are on the social issues, but he chose to endorse to back the progressive, and AOC and Bernie chose not to. And they would say, to be fair to them, they'd say, hey, that's gonna hurt our credibility. And when she loses, they'll say, oh, it's your fault or whatever, right? And we want to preserve that credibility, and we want to win the general election. And hey, if I don't, want to, or I don't like her positions as much as I like others, I don't have to endorse. Sure, of course, everybody's free to do whatever they want. But what was your sense of how much those no endorsements matter?
Seeing how close this race was, I have to question it. I have to question that if they did give her that endorsement, maybe she could have made it just over the finish line. But it does make people question. And I know sometimes they usually don't get involved in like these gubernatorial races. I understand that. But in this race, people are upset, and they feel like it could have made a difference. And maybe it could have, maybe it couldn't have. I'm not 100% sure. But we had this conversation just recently, also with independent candidate Shama Sawant, who wanted an endorsement from DSA. And many of us were like, just give her the endorsement. Like, you agree with her on like 99.9% of the policies. And what I've come to learn, over the years is that politicians and organizations, I guess they have different, criteria that they're looking for. Sometimes they might be afraid to stick their neck out for a candidate if they feel as though they may not make it in the end. I think Bernie and AOC probably were already told she has no chance to win the general election. And then it's like, well, they're gonna have that on their record. But to me, I feel like the principle is more important. Do you support the policies or not? So I think they should have endorsed her.
Yeah, look, if the race was decided by 2 points, 4 points, then it's a little bit more arguable if it made a difference. She lost by 0.4. No, it made a difference. It put doubt into people's heads. And so this is what I call the shortcutting of a candidate. Shortcut Chakrabarti was AOC's chief of staff. He was in comfortable second place, nearly catching up to first, and the top two make it into the runoff in California, running in Nancy Pelosi's old seat. AOC refused to endorse him, and he dropped like a rock. They started running ads, you can't trust him because AOC doesn't trust him. So AOC actively destroyed his chances by not endorsing him. She saw the ads, and she still didn't do it. So I think we got to stop shortcutting our own candidates. Why, this is crazy. And I'm saying this from a person that doesn't agree with Francesca Hong on a lot of the issues, right? And Sabby, I've had those debates internally within the left, right? Hey, don't go in that direction. But when it comes to election time, what are you helping establishment Democrats for? No, I mean, why do we have a Big Tent if you're not gonna stay inside the tent when elections come, right? Then it's kind of pointless. So that's my take on it. But I'm gonna show you one more clip from mainstream media. This is Chris Matthews. They brought him out of retirement to yell at progressives. He's on Morning Joe. Let's watch him real quick.
I like AOC generally, but she came out and said we're just a Big Tent party. Well, the problem with the Big Tent defense is every Democrat has to defend all this crap coming from the left. They've got to say, I believe in all this crazy stuff, and that makes me a Democrat. You've got to say, no, I'm not a member of the DSA, and here's why, and make it very clear. So it's going to require politicians to be good politicians and say, here's where I stand.
Right.
This is what I'm a regular Democrat. I'm for labor unions. I'm for opportunity for everybody. I'm for civil rights. I'm for all the things I believe in as a Democrat, but I'm not with this crowd. And I think that's going to be a line that has to be drawn by Democrats, because I'm telling you, the last 6 weeks of this election is going to be an attack on El Sayed and the DSA in New York and the Mamdani, and it's all going to come out and blame every Democrat for everything the DSA is doing.
I find that segment so ironic, like almost on a meta level, Sabby, because so it's mainstream media and Joe Scarborough and MS Now that are constantly screaming, they're all DSA, they're all socialist, right? And then they come out and go, no, you have to clarify you're not DSA. Okay, but it would help if you didn't say that we're all DSA when we're not. And now like the onus is on us to prove that we're not radicals or something. Well, how about the Republicans? They have like loads and loads of lunatic radicals, but no one ever says Herschel Walker represents the entire Republican Party. And if every single Republican doesn't actively say, I'm not with Herschel Walker, just to pick one of their crazy candidates from the past, then you're all Herschel Walker. So this is only done to progressives. Doesn't it show that mainstream media in reality, let alone being liberal media, which is hilarious, is actually in a lot of ways, including MS Now, our biggest opponents, because they're the ones who smear us the most.
Unfortunately, corporate media, they're the ones that control the narrative, and the Democratic Party, they fight harder against the DSA than they do against Donald Trump. And it's very apparent they want to keep the establishment in place. This is ultimately why some like myself, we have been trying to get behind like independent candidates or third-party candidates. And it's very hard because the Democratic Party will, kick off Green Party candidates on the ballot, and the Republican Party will remove libertarian candidates on the ballot sometimes. So that's a battle that they have to deal with. But I think that this is why some of us have said, I wonder, if people like Ilhan and Rashida Tlaib, if they had the opportunity to do so, or if they had the resources to do so, would they have been better off if they had their own political party? I wonder that, and this is why some of us we're calling for more independence to get in there, right? Because these politicians, they still have to answer to Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, and before that Nancy Pelosi, and now you have these commentators that are coming out of retirement, that are coming back on corporate media to say, no, this cannot happen in this party. It's very clear that they want to keep the establishment in place. So that's why many of us wonder, like, would they have been better off if they just would have been independent, or maybe they got in the way that they did and then they became independents, or if they had a separate party. And that's a whole other conversation. And we know that's something that's not easy to do. But this is why more of us have been advocating for independence, people that can kind of break up that duopoly in Congress.
And of course, the mainstream media reaction to that would be, how dare you, you're betraying the Democrats. And that's why you should definitely not vote for Abdul El Said or any of these other progressives in their elections. But wait, which one is it? Is it vote blue no matter who? Or if the establishment corrupt candidate doesn't win, all of a sudden all of the establishment Democrats betray the progressive who was in the race, right? So to be fair, now a lot of the establishment has come back around to Abdul El Said, but that's their inclination and what they've done in every race. So I understand the frustration. And so even if I don't agree that we should break off or right now, for example, will there come a time when if the Democratic Party regains control and just establishes that supremacy for their corporate and corrupt positions? Yeah, of course there's gonna come a time, like Tucker and MTG, et cetera, are doing on the right. At some point, people on the left are gonna go, if you're gonna keep us out of your primaries, you're gonna not give us a fair chance to win these elections, well then you're pushing us out of the party, and there's nothing we can do. I think all of that will come to a head in 2028, and how they handle the presidential primary. I think if they run a fair primary, then maybe the party can stay together. But if they run a super unfair primary where they try to push out progressives again, then we're gonna have massive trouble.
Where the super delegates decide to give a state that one of the candidates won to another candidate. That's the thing. And the Republicans don't have to worry about that because they don't have to deal with like the super delegates. But the reality is, like in the Democratic Party, we watched this happen to Bernie Sanders, right? Like in 2016, Bernie won states like West Virginia, and the super delegates decided that they were gonna give that state to Hillary Clinton. That is the wall that a lot of these progressives end up hitting. And so I ultimately believe that some of these progressive politicians, I think some of the reasons why they're walking back some of their previous statements from like 2020 is because they want to get that approval from the super delegates so that maybe they can break through, right? Like maybe AOC thinks if she does this, maybe she can somewhat break through. But we never really know, but I just know that the super delegates tend to look out for the establishment. And I'm not 100% sure the Democratic Party learned their lesson from 2024. I felt like we were largely ignored. Many of us that were advocating for Gaza, many of us that were saying no more wars, the demands that we had towards Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, I feel like we were very much ignored. And I'm not 100% sure that the DNC really cares even now. And so that is rather concerning.
No, I'm pretty sure they don't care. So I don't think they learned any lessons from 2024. In fact, they tried to bury the lessons that they learned through their autopsy. And yeah, the establishment and Nancy Pelosi and television being so friendly to AOC scares me a little bit. Do they know something we don't know? And we are worried about that. But hey guys, don't forget to celebrate by getting your AIPAC Tears mug at shoptyt.com, because last night, don't lose track of the actual headline. We collected a lot of AIPAC Tears. That's at shoptyt.com. All right, when we come back, this is a bombshell. The ADL admits to spying in on Americans on the left and the right. And they might even have, or apparently they do have, agent provocateurs who are trying to instigate you so that they could, apparently maybe get you to do something wrong so that they can take away your freedom for criticizing Israel. It is disgusting, and we're gonna show that to you when we come back. read these blind largely. TYT.com members. Childless Cat Lady says, yes, Sabby. Michael Naples says, welcome to the hashtag TYT live family. Sabrina, remember to be nice to Johnny Pie. John's, of course, the host of Damage Report, 1 o'clock Eastern every day. Nostra Science says, is TYT live at 3 p.m.? Is your straight still clogged? We are live at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 o'clock Eastern. I don't know if there was an issue today for you. Hakuna Matata says, SabbySabs, I'm so excited for this. I think I asked to have her on like 2 weeks ago. She's an excellent political commentator and speaks her mind. Love Sabby. I love this reaction, and ask and ye shall receive. We do this show for you guys. Boomer Dragon Cat says, those in the Washington DC bubble just do not understand how many of us out here are feeling stressed to desperate. 1,000,000,000% Cat. They don't understand that at all, and they don't really care, even if they did understand it. Nerd Ferguson says, okay, Sabby's awesome. Stop giving us more people and shows to want to watch. A day is only 24 hours long. No, I'm super glad that we help other people and other shows and introduce them to you guys. We got to make the whole movement stronger. Jonathan Ayala writes in on Twitch, TYT makes me move like grease lightning sometimes. Wow. Okay, great, Jonathan, thank you. Cinco Midi says, genocide may in fact be more controversial than Hassan Piker. Of course, not if you listen to mainstream media. They're like, genocide's no big deal. Slaughtering 23,000 children, incinerating them alive is no big deal at all. But did you hear what Hassan Piker said? Right? Bunch of freaking liars. YouTube member with a gal says, sitting here depressed in Wisconsin today, Hong should have won the primary. Feels very suspicious when the polls had her far ahead leading up to. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Sabby with you guys today, and Sorrow6269, thank you for hitting that beautiful join button below and becoming one of the Young Turks. You guys make this honest show possible, and I love you for it. You could also do it through tyt.com/join, and that helps a lot. All right, let's go to the next story.
The non-sectarian anti-Nazi League kept going into the 70s and mid-70s when James Sheldon died. And the Anti-Defamation League has been spying ever since. And I was speaking at a fundraiser years ago in LA, where Jonathan Greenblatt flew in, but I want access to your spy records. Not contemporary, but the old ones. And he said, no, because we're still spying and still using the same techniques.
Wow. Did we all know that the ADL is spying in on Americans? We've got a lot more on that, and I want to ask Sabby about it in a second. But that was historian and USC professor Stephen J. Ross, and he was talking about Jonathan Greenblatt at the ADL. And Sabby, I want to show you one more clip from Ross, because these admissions are stunning, and they're saying it like it's no big deal, and apparently everybody on the inside already knew it. And if you guys didn't recognize that laugh, I don't blame you, who can recognize the laugh. But that was Rachel Maddow thinking that that was hilarious that the ADL spies in on innocent Americans. So let's watch more from Ross.
And I said, what are you talking about? I know what your techniques are. You send in, they weren't really sending in agent provocateurs, but they would ask members throughout the country to go to these meetings, to take notes, and to send them to their local chapters, which would then send them to headquarters. And they had, they would eventually have a few agent provocateurs, but that wasn't their main objective. But I thought, okay, you don't want to do it, that's fine. But I guess he was trying to protect the names of those in the past.
Sabby, there's a lot to break down here, and I'm going to get to Greenblatt's comments where he basically gave a confession. It was kind of amazing. But before we even get to that, so they infiltrate all of our different groups on the left and the right, as Greenblatt's going to explain in a little bit. And apparently a lot of people in Washington know this, that the ADL is spying in on Americans on behalf of Israel, and that they also have agent provocateurs to what? Instigate things to get the group in trouble and then use it as a pretense to what? Arrest them, take away their freedoms. They're acting like it's perfectly normal. This is not normal. This is crazy, isn't it?
Yes, a lot of this happens on X, formerly known as Twitter. A lot of these accounts that don't have a face, or it's like a picture of a cartoon or something like that. I watch people argue with these accounts, and I just look at the page and see when was this account created, what's the activity on it, and it's very clear. A lot of that activity does take place on these social media platforms like X. There's also infiltration in Discord groups as well. But basically, we are losing our right to privacy here in the United States. And this is something that I look back on Edward Snowden, and I feel like, as Americans, I feel like we failed Edward Snowden. I think part of this has to do with the fact that, during the Obama era, and there was this whole, at that time, you couldn't really criticize Obama. That's really how it felt. But looking back, how Edward Snowden tried to warn us, they are watching you, they are spying on you. I feel like America, we really should have stood up for Edward Snowden at that time. But this is happening under the Trump administration, but it's bipartisan. Under the Biden administration, we saw this crackdown on privacy and an increase on censorship. When it came to the Uhuru movement and Chairman Omali Yeshitela, the DOJ came after them and said, we are going to indict you because your emails show that you may have been thinking about entertaining people at Russia. Now they're trying to tell you what you were thinking. It's very dangerous. And I said to myself, if this can happen under the Democrats, what's gonna happen if Trump gets back in office? Like, both of these parties support this invasion of privacy, and they do support, obviously, increasing censorship just on different issues. Under the Biden administration, we saw censorship increase with the pandemic. And under the Trump administration, now the censorship is coming about Israel. And my biggest fear is Marco Rubio listed these individuals and these organizations. I'm afraid that the Trump administration is going to try to make this law or this rule that it is going to be illegal to criticize Israel in this country. And I know that may sound far gone, but look at what's happening in the UK. I mean, they have really strict, laws around this kind of thing now. People are going to jail. And so if we lose our speech, we lose everything, you guys.
Yeah, look, nobody knows that better than me. I got banned from the United Kingdom for criticizing Israel. It's mental. The West is supposed to stand for freedom. And they literally took my freedom of movement away from me because I've criticized Israel. And that's not all. Obviously, we had the student protesters get arrested, get put on blacklists, so they're never gonna get hired again. Brutalized by thugs on the pro-Israel side here in LA, at UCLA. And then the cops watched as the peace protesters were beat, and then they arrested the peace protesters. So this oppression is over the top, and it's amazing how they're almost bragging about it on air now. So now we're going to show you Jonathan Greenblatt, the head of the ADL. ADL is supposed to represent Jewish Americans. It stopped doing that a long time ago. It's only representing Israel. And in fact, I see them attacking Jewish Americans not supportive of Israel all the time. And 63% of Jewish Americans are against the current Netanyahu government, but the ADL is 200% in favor of Netanyahu and all of the crimes and the wars and the genocides of this particular government in Israel. And they don't care what Jewish Americans think. And by the way, they're endangering Jewish Americans by sending Jewish Americans in to spy in on all these different groups. I love that they had, like, I forget if it was Passover or other meals that they had together at Columbia in the peace protests. I love that there are Jewish Americans in the peace movement on the left, the right, etc. But now that we know that there are spies sent in by the ADL to spy on behalf of Israel, that's gonna make people suspicious, and that doesn't help Jewish Americans. That deeply hurts Jewish Americans, but they don't care, all in service of their beloved Israel. So watch the things that Jonathan Greenblatt admits here.
We have a whole apparatus. I have 40 analysts working full time, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, monitoring extremists. We monitor them online, social media, messaging apps, video games, cryptocurrency, podcasts, short form video, Wikipedia, LLMs. We monitor these people and we share the intelligence with the FBI. So we're monitoring left-wing radicals like the DSA and the anti-war crazies and the pro-Palestine crazies. We're monitoring right-wing extremists like white supremacists, armed militia groups. We're monitoring political Islamists and Christian nationalists, all of them. And then we train. We're the largest trainer of law enforcement in America, extremism and hate. We train 20,000 officers every year.
Oh my God. I mean, look at all those admissions in there. So they're targeting people on the left and the right, DSA. If you're pro-Palestinian, you're getting targeted. If you're pro-peace, you're getting targeted. If you're on the right wing and they're just gonna call you Christian nationalist or whatever they're gonna call you, you're getting targeted. And you're all being infiltrated by a group supporting a foreign government. And this is not normal. This is not, they keep saying, oh, it's normal, everybody does it. Really? Does Finland do that? Are the Finnish infiltrating our groups on the left and the right and then working with the FBI and turning them in for what? For being Americans? For daring to support your own country rather than this country that has committed a genocide and apparently is infiltrating all of our groups and spying in on us and then working with our government to target us? That's insane. And then he brags about, oh yeah, we've got the police too. But remember, we have no influence and no control at all. But we're working with the FBI and the local police and we're targeting everyone who isn't pro-Israel and we're gonna get them. Okay, Jonathan, thank you for the confession. We appreciate it. That is disgusting. It is un-American. It's a betrayal of this country. And by the way, any police organization or the FBI working with these guys under the auspices of fighting anti-Semitism, when I think that in reality they're increasing anti-Semitism and they're all doing it for the benefit of a foreign country. If you're working for a foreign country, there's a word for that. It's called traitor. And I don't care if it's Sweden or Israel or Bolivia. It doesn't matter. But it isn't Bolivia, Sabby, is it? It isn't Kazakhstan. It isn't South Korea. It's Israel. And every time you say, just repeat what they just said, they go, how dare you? We're allowed to say it and we're allowed to spy and infiltrate and try to get you, take your freedom away. But if you dare repeat my own quotes, anti-Semite, FBI investigate him. I mean, so Sabby, you've probably been investigated because they said social media, podcast, short form video, that covers all of us. So yeah, I might be high enough on the list that I literally get banned from countries and they put me on top 10 lists. And so I know exactly how it feels to be targeted by Israel inside your own country. But the reality is apparently almost all of us are targeted. I think this is one of the most outrageous things I've ever seen. What do you think?
We're gonna have to cross political lines for this one, guys. Like you can't, like this is a time you have to put political, your political party aside. This is impacting every single one of us that criticize Israel. So this is not about left and right now. This is very serious. And as you can see, they're trying to take more and more of our freedoms away. And it's scary, it's very concerning. I've been warning people about these online groups. I would tell everybody, be very careful. I don't think any of these platforms are confidential. I don't think your Twitter or your X DMs are confidential either. I think all of these things can be seen. That includes Telegram, that includes Signal, these other messaging apps that people use as well. I don't think anything there is actually private. And so you have to be careful when you're in these online forums, in these groups. You don't really always know who you're talking to. And sometimes there are accounts that come in that try to stir up that type of energy and try to pull information so that you might end up on that list as well. That list originally started out from Marco Rubio, started out with those that went to Cuba to do humanitarian aid there, like Code Pink, Medea Benjamin, and all of them. But interestingly enough, all of those people and organizations that are there also criticize Israel. So I think that's the big key there. I don't think it's just about Cuba. And if they come after them, if they start to defund them and debank these organizations, they can take down anyone. So I think that's the way they're gonna try to get people to be quiet and zip their lip about their criticism of Israel. If they take your money, then they take your freedom.
Yeah, they're definitely gonna go for debanking. We've shown that in other videos. And Jonathan Greenblatt's at the head of that parade as well. We're gonna take away your money, but we don't control anything. The Israelis don't control anything. We're gonna pretend that all Jews are on our side and you're all anti-Semites, even though 63% of Jewish Americans don't agree with Jonathan Greenblatt. But it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter because he's not working for Jewish Americans. He's working for Israel. And so, he says, all of this is just conspiratorial. It's all anti-Semitic. Everything is anti-Semitic, and you'll be punished. Jonathan Greenblatt says, and we're working with the FBI to punish you. He looks like a monster, honestly. And then he'll cry and cry. Oh no, I get to spy in on you. I get to take away your rights. But if you call me a monster, anti-Semite, destroy him, right? Right, Jonathan? He loves to destroy people who don't work for Israel. And there's these thugs, what I would call a terrorist network inside our country that are trying to terrorize any American who doesn't kneel to Israel. They also have StopAntisemitism.com and Canary Mission, these disgusting organizations that attack your family if you criticize Israel, and they think they're totally within their rights. Let's get their husbands and wives fired and destroy them. And we showed you the lady who runs StopAntisemitism.com went with giant Israeli flags all around her, saying we're tracking and monitoring and we're gonna get them, just like Jonathan Greenblatt. So, and then he'll go, oh, I'm gonna hide behind anti-Semitism, and watch him say this about the war, for example.
Just look at what happened in the days after the US and Israel launched the military operations against Iran. I mean, whatever your views on the conflict might be, and reasonable people can hold very reasonable differences. What happened next was not about policy. It wasn't about geopolitics. It was about blame. And the blame, as it so often does, was placed at the feet of who else? The Jews. For some, they pointed fingers at the Israelis who they claimed whispered a few too many times in President Trump's ear. For the senior senator from Maryland, a state with one of the most large, most active, most observant Jewish populations in America, he blamed AIPAC, which he slandered as un-American.
He said, and you know what did they do? They blamed the Jews. No, literally no one blamed the Jews. Maybe some Groypers, but no one on the left blamed the Jews. You made that up. In fact, he's hiding behind Jewish Americans. He's using them as human shields. No, the people that were blamed was the Israeli government. But he doesn't want you to blame the Israeli government. He would much rather have you blame Jews in America, because then he could use that as a device to protect his beloved Israel. Oh, Jews are gonna get harmed in the way? He doesn't care at all. As long as Israel is protected. I am very curious about his coordination with the Israeli government. So very, very curious. I don't know if we'll ever have an honest president who doesn't spy in on Americans, but actually protects our country and finds out who's actually coordinating with foreign countries to betray us, including Jewish Americans. So which evil anti-Semites blamed Israel for the war? Well, let's find out.
The second question that's been asked is, why now? Well, there's two reasons why now. The first is it was abundantly clear that if Iran came under attack by anyone, the United States or Israel or anyone, they were going to respond against the United States. The orders had been delegated down to the field commanders. It was automatic, and in fact, it bared to be true, because in fact, within an hour of the initial attack on the leadership compound, the missile forces in the south and in the north, for that matter, had already been activated to launch. In fact, those had already been pre-positioned. The third is the assessment that was made that if we stood and waited for that attack to come first before we hit them, we would suffer much higher casualties. And so the president made the very wise decision. We knew that there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that that would precipitate an attack against American forces. And we knew that if we didn't preemptively go after them before they launched those attacks, we would suffer higher casualties and perhaps even higher those killed. And then we would all be here answering questions about why we knew that and didn't act.
So that's Marco Rubio, who got paid $5 million in campaign contributions from Larry Ellison, the #1 donor to the IDF. Larry Ellison reported back to the Israeli ambassador that Rubio is now going to be completely pro-Israel and support whatever Israel wants. And even he said it was Israel. The New York Times said that it was Israel. Netanyahu in the Situation Room, the head of Mossad on Zoom, convincing Trump that they couldn't block the Strait of Hormuz, that regime change would be easy. The same thing the Israelis have, yes, whispered in the ears of Trump and Biden and all of our presidents. Yes, AIPAC and the Israeli lobby, #1 lifetime donor to Joe Biden, Mike Johnson, Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, Donald Trump. And then they all pretend, oh no, you're all anti-Semites. No, Sabby, what I see is a disgusting foreign operation to infiltrate this country and try to make sure that we are supporting with all of our military might and all of our money and all of our resources a different country. I think that someone should be investigated, and it isn't us. It's the traitors who are working for Israel and then having the temerity to use our own police against us on behalf of Israel.
Right, and this is where we're at now. I want to remind everyone that Israel has universal health care. We don't. I mean, it's just, we are not taking care of our people here. We're not taking care of our infrastructure. This country economically is not heading in the right direction. But there's so much interest in worrying about what works for Israel and what people in Israel need. And I don't see any other country, anyone with a sane mind, why would you put another country's needs before your own, before your people are taken care of? But this is the trick that they're doing. The thing is now, even if you try to just say, well, I'm just criticizing the government, the message that is being sent is that if you're criticizing even just the government, you're still criticizing Israel. Therefore, that is anti-Semitic. It's a trick. Now, luckily, I think most people nowadays are not falling for it, and that's another thing. Israel was really panicking right now in a sense that they've lost worldwide support. Meanwhile, you have these leaders in some of these countries that may support Israel, but if you talk to the people on the ground, a lot of the people on the ground do not support Israel and don't support this war with Iran. They are losing their foothold a little bit here. And that's why you see them trying to implement these policies and these restrictions to kind of get everybody back into the camp, because they're terrified now, because they, for the first time ever in my life, the majority of Americans don't support Israel. For the first time ever in my life. And they're not used to that. So now they're trying to figure out, okay, what do we do? And they've tried so many different types of propaganda information out there to get people back in favor of Israel, but it's just not working. They're gonna come for social media next. And I warn everybody about this. It's only a matter of time before they start to censor social media. You're not gonna be allowed to criticize the government of Israel on social media. But that's only if I say we don't try to do something about it. I think one of the things that we can do, I think those pro-Palestinian protests was a great step in the right direction. That went on for like 2 years. I think we need a movement across this country. I think that movement needs to be at least 5% of the population to be effective. And I think that movement needs to be centered around, obviously, ending the wars and supporting the economic issues that we need in this country. In other words, we need an anti-war class movement. And so if we can get hundreds of thousands of people out in the street, for pro-Palestine and other issues, we really need to get millions out in the street for this. Otherwise, we will remain to be silenced. I mean, we really got to push back on it. The way people are pushing back on the flock cameras, that's great. Keep doing what you're doing. I mean, the data centers are basically surveillance centers, guys. That's really what this is. So all of the rural communities that are rising up and they say, get rid of the flock cameras, get rid of these data centers, they're in the right because they know what's coming. So I just hope that at some point in this country, we could have a massive movement for these issues.
Yeah, last two quick things here. National media is on the other side. So they see all these same videos we do. They will never cover them. because that would hurt their beloved Israel. So they're the most biased people in America. They're the least factual, the least objective. And so everything they do is in defense of Israel. And to them, of course, Israel gets to spy in on you. How dare you? And they're the #1 people who help people like Jonathan Greenblatt call Americans on the left and the right anti-Semites. They're the ones attacking and trying to destroy people on behalf of Israel. Okay, but I need everyone to understand the most important thing, guys, is we have to break the cycle of hatred. So do not give in to these people like Jonathan Greenblatt. We have to stick together as Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Americans, atheists, all of us, okay? So stay together as Americans, do not hate one another, do not ever blame Jewish people for this. There is a small group of radical Zionists in this country. They are a minority among Jewish Americans, and they are obsessed. They have a religious fever, but it isn't about religion. It's ironically about nationalism. Nationalism of Israel, Zionism above all. And if they have to destroy America, political organizations on the left, the right, they have to endanger Jewish Americans, they don't care. That's why they're radicals. And they're trying to terrorize all of us, by the way, including, again, Jewish Americans that get put on lists of self-haters. And then they're like, no, you don't count as a Jew. I've seen them say it 1,000 times. It's time that we all stood up against it and said enough, enough. This is America, where we're all together and we love each other. If you want to try to spread division and hatred, yes, there is unfortunately these days, there is a country for that. It's Israel. There's many countries for that, unfortunately. So, religious fundamentalist countries like Saudi Arabia and Israel, who say, yes, only our religion. God promised everything to us, and we should crush everyone else. Well, that's the exact opposite of America, where we say we're all united, we're all together, there's no one above others, and we have equal rights. So let's stick together and make sure that we protect this country and all of us here, not just some of us. Okay, now we got to move on to the next story. So former RNC chair Ronna Romney McDaniel came out and she thought she'd be clever and she'd attack Medicare for all and people on the left. Well, I want to show you that clip and then I want to show you the facts and embarrass her with the receipts. Watch.
Is this all a gift to Republicans, though?
I don't think we can take it a gift because we don't want to get lazy. We've got to keep working. I mean, Mom, El Sayed in Michigan, yes, he's a socialist, he's a communist, but just saying those words, kids don't know what that means. So you have to say, he's going to raise your taxes. He just admitted he's going to raise taxes on everybody. He's going to take away your health care. You're going to lose that opportunity to pick your doctor. A lot of UAW members in Michigan don't like that. We have to define what they're talking about and not just call them a socialist. I think that's what a lot of Republicans are falling on. People don't know what that means.
All right, there's so much to break down there. First of all, she said, Abdullah El-Sayed, he's a socialist, he's a communist. That's a 100% lie, and that makes sense. She ran the RNC. They're pathological liars, and I get it. Politicians all lie, and the DNC is, not an angel to say the least. Okay, and we've got our massive issues with the DNC. RNC in this case is just avowed liars, pathological liars. So Abdullah El-Sayed has said countless times that he's a capitalist. He's not part of DSA, let alone a communist, but McDaniel lies as usual. And then we're gonna get to the rest of her lies because she says, oh, Medicare for all, oh, that's so bad. Really? And it's gonna cost us so much money, it's gonna raise your taxes. Not true. So a Yale study just came out, Medicare for all would save 114,000 American lives and $1 trillion a year. Savings include reductions in administrative overhead, pharmaceutical prices, fraudulent billing that comes in at over $200 billion we're giving to disgusting corporate CEOs who are robbing us blind on purpose, and avoidable emergency care. And next step for the study is peer review, but older studies have also found similar findings. Previous research has shown that shifting the United States to Medicare for all system could save roughly 68,000 lives and $650 billion per year. The new one from Yale says higher, obviously. And remember, Trump just took away Medicare from tons of Americans. To be fair, he had to give everyone making above $500,000 a $1.1 trillion tax cut. Did he? Did they need another $1 trillion? But now a lot of you are gonna lose health care because the richest people in the country, according to Trump and the Republicans, needed more and more of your money because their greed is infinite. So what's the result? Upward of 15 million Americans could lose health insurance coverage over the next decade because of Medicaid cuts and President Donald Trump's so-called One Big Beautiful Act and the Republican-led Congress's failure to extend Affordable Care Act subsidies that expired at the end of last year. So now when you add that on top of that, well, you're gonna get a lot more than 114,000 Americans dead because they don't have health insurance. No other developed nation on earth doesn't have universal health care, allows people to die in the streets because they couldn't pay for private health insurance, because they couldn't pay for the yacht of a CEO of a health insurance company that doesn't need to exist at all. We're not talking about doctors here, we're just talking about health insurance. They say you have to do it in a private way, where we all have to wait to get a doctor's appointment, where everything is constantly denied. No, you can't have that, you can't have this, go die. And give me more money, give me your premiums, etc. And I gotta have a profit margin. And the profit margin has to be gigantic. And we have to add to it every year, and you owe me all that. All the other countries in the world that are developed use the government for health insurance. And it works without all of that excess, all of that waste. We save money if we go to universal health care. Under universal health care in developed nations, they pay on average half of what we do. $1 trillion is a massive understatement. They pay half of what we do. This is a total robbery. One more lie. She says, UAW doesn't support Medicare for all. Really? The UAW supports Medicare for All Act. It is endorsed by the UAW, and they say because no one should have to rely on the generosity of their boss to see a doctor or get the care that they need. So, now I have more to debunk her, but I want to bring Sabby in here. So, we have the lying media that tells you Medicare for all is a radical position when it polls at 65%. So are 2/3 of Americans radical? And then you have the liars, of course, on the Republican side. And by the way, let's be real, corporate Democrats who keep telling us that this is undoable and it'll lead to us paying more. So break down all those lies for me.
You know, it's insane that they're still telling this lie about Medicare for all after all these years. But the reality is it is cheaper if we had Medicare for all compared to the system that we do have now. There's been multiple studies that have been done on this, as you just showed one of them there. The reality is, I don't think corporate media will ever tell people the truth about Medicare for all. And then that just goes back to following the dots, connecting the money, right? Like the shareholders for those networks, BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, they are usually the shareholders for like those media networks. And they're never gonna support something like that you can do, for the people. So I think that's important to mention. That's why a lot of times they have the talking points that they have when we start talking about this is what we need to do for the working class, for the 99%. But the reality is, part of me wonders, nowadays, if they still continue to push back on Medicare for all, is because they want some of us to disappear. I have to ask that question, especially after the pandemic, especially after, during that time when people were getting sick. I have to wonder if they don't want all of us to have health care because they want some of us gone. And that would fall into, these theories about depopulating. I do wonder that, especially, in this country. But when we have countries that are allies of the United States, like Israel or Denmark, these other countries that have universal health care, it's really interesting when you hear these politicians, when they say, or these media pundits, when they claim that that's socialism, you never hear them say to Netanyahu that it's socialism. You never see them point their finger towards any of those other leaders of those countries that are quote unquote allies, that what you have is socialism. And I think that people need to mention that more, right? Like if it's so bad and all of those things, then why don't you ever say anything to the Israeli government about them having universal health care? So the reality is, it's a profit-driven system. They want to continue to make money, and that's where a lot of this lies. And they know that, well, the Blue Cross Blue Shield and Aetna that have made a lot of money, and they've ripped off a lot of people. I feel like the goal never really was to cure people. I feel like the goal is to just provide treatment so you can still make money.
Yeah, so to your point, it's an excellent one on welfare, right? So if a poor person in America, for whatever reason, trying to rise up or whatever, like you could have any opinion you like about a poor person in America, right? Where you could judge him if you like, et cetera, but he's an American. And I've known tons of people who use welfare as a hand up and then got up and sustained themselves, et cetera. But at least they're Americans and you're helping your own citizens. But our media, both the Republicans and corporate media, which are welfare queen, right? Israel then takes $320 billion off of us and they're not welfare queens? And they're one of the top economies in the world. As Sabby pointed out, they have universal healthcare, we don't. They have free college, we don't. So why do they get to have everything? We have to finance them. If we ever help ourselves, we're welfare queens. But if we help Israel, they're not welfare queens. No. If we're gonna use that term, Israel is the queen of welfare queens, the very, very top welfare queen in this country, constantly demanding more and more money. I have to give more healthcare to my citizens. I have to attack more of my enemies. I have to destroy more of my neighbors. You owe me money. And for what? You're not even us, you're someone else, you're a different country. And the part I don't quite agree with you on, Sabby, is I don't think they're looking to kill us. I think they're just looking to rob us blind. I don't mean Israel, I mean all the donor class, everyone donating to politicians at the highest levels, the corporations, and yes, foreign governments. They're just taking and taking, and to the point about who's actually hurting the average guy. Well, what happened in the one big beautiful bill from Donald Trump? Here's what Yahoo Finance reports. Middle income Americans will see a rise in taxes by an average of $900 in 2026, an Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy report says. So it turns out Donald Trump is the one that took money out of your pocket and raised your taxes if you're middle class in America. By the way, every tax break, the Social Security and the one on tips, runs out very quickly. But the tax cuts for the rich and for corporations, they have no deadline, they never run out. Because the whole enterprise are disgustingly corrupt government. Their job is to take as much of your taxes as possible and redistribute it to the top, to the donors who legally bribed them. And the job of the media is to say, I don't see it, I don't hear it, and I'm not gonna speak it, that's for sure. It's super obvious. The donors are bribing our politicians, and our politicians are robbing us and giving it to other countries, giving it to corporations who don't need it. And then what does it do? The effect of that, Sabby, is yes, 114,000 Americans die because we don't have a health insurance. Americans die in foreign wars we don't need to be in. And so it's not necessarily their intent, in my opinion, but it is the result. And I think it's all comes from the same place. They don't give a damn about us. And honestly, this democracy, it's not dead yet because you could still vote, you could still capture the government, and now we see a bunch of outsiders winning now for the first time in our lives. But they've nearly killed our democracy with infinite corruption, money in politics that allowed legalized bribery. And if once you allow legalized bribery, the mob's gonna come in, and that's what these corporate PACs and foreign government PACs are. They're the mafia. They're gonna come in and purchase the politicians and proceed to rob all of us for the rest of the time. In fact, they'd be suckers not to, right? So if big oil doesn't rob you, big pharma's gonna rob you. And if big pharma doesn't rob you, Israel's gonna rob you. So Sabby, isn't the only way out of this getting money out of politics? Otherwise, we're gonna be on this endless treadmill of corruption for the rest of our lives while the a-holes in media tell us there's nothing wrong, back to the mines.
I'm so glad you brought that up because that's what a lot of this goes back to. The corporate money, the big money in electoral politics is part of the reason why we're here, right? When we talk about these wars, that's also money in politics. Wall Street benefits from that, of course, also the military-industrial complex. We're looking at now, we have Elon Musk is a trillionaire. I don't know if people realize how dangerous that is. Like he already put money towards Trump's, election. Think about how much money he can throw and toss into elections now. So we have a big problem. I think this country would be run very differently if we didn't have corporate money, this big money interest in electoral politics. I think you would see sweeping legislation pass across the board. And I think it is the money, and then you have lobby interest groups that are also writing legislation. That should be illegal. How did we get here? And so honestly, you end up with a lot of puppets that are in DC. You'll have a handful of people that will stand for what they think is right. And then of course, like big money will try to remove them from office. They're not always successful at doing that. But honestly, you have a lot of puppets that are in Congress right now. And I feel like it is now the time where they're really starting to feel that heat and that pressure from the voters. Because some of these people, they're losing left and right. People that have been taking all this money from, whether it's AIPAC, whether it's from big oil. I think Haley Stevens really, for example, I think she thought she had it in the bag. I really do, because she had the endorsement from Clyburn and she had so much money that was coming in. And it's just, I think it's now that time where more of them are starting to feel that heat and feel that pressure from the voters.
Here. If you're on the left or the right or the middle, please keep putting pressure on incumbents. The incumbents are crooks. Vote almost all of them out unless you're positive they're not taking money in politics and they're serving you. There's only a couple of them anyway. But vote out all the other bums who are here to rob you and get money out of politics. Otherwise, the robbery is going to be permanent. Let's get that amendment. Let's work together as a nation and show them what America's all about. All right, we got to go. SabbySabs podcast. Everybody check it out. Sabby, thank you for joining us today. Really appreciated it.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. Let's keep it going. All right, when we come back, we are going to keep it going. The Republicans are beginning to panic that Americans care about affordability. It's kind of hilarious. We'll show it to you when we return.
Indisputable is still the fastest growing news show in America compared to CNN, Fox News, and 30 other networks. We tell the truth on Indisputable because the truth is indisputable. We go places that other news media outlets refuse to go. When there were human rights abuses happening at the Victorville prison, guards and members of the community contacted us.
You, through your investigative reporting, unearthed very troubling allegations about specific forms of abuse and discrimination in the federal prison system.
It really doesn't take much to be a trusted voice. All it takes is to be fearless, report on matters, be an advocate. I called it the bullpen intentionally because it's a place of preparation. We present individuals who may have an opposing view, so we debate. Sometimes we interview individuals because their stories deserve to be heard. A survivor of significant police misconduct and his attorney. We covered this story earlier and to remind you of the horror of one man being shot at damn near 100 times by the police. We take time on this show to showcase the temper tantrums of Karens in the wild. We do this not because we want to see people's emotional outbursts in public, but because these incidents are emblematic of a bigger societal issue taking place across the nation, and it has to be checked.
My friend, my big homie, attorney at law, Benjamin Crump.
I just want to thank you, man. Educated, articulate brothers like yourself speak truth to power. It makes a great difference in changing the landscape in America. So
listen, no matter what you do, don't allow the politics of ideology to evaporate the soul that still exists inside of you. They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reform, so I won't stop. You won't stop either.
I'm wearing one of our pieces of merchandise. So the funny thing about the Dragon Squad, and that's what our viewers call themselves. That's the name of the group, but every individual chooses their own name. You might have Cincinnati Dragon. You might have Harry Potter Dragon. We have a Grandma Sunshine Dragon is one of those that I remember. These are people that like to have an element of themselves, their lives, what's significant to them reflected as a part of the community. But the concept of the Dragon Squad is just something I threw away as a joke. I was mocking the Proud Boys, these like right-wing groups that come up with a name for themselves that they think is cool, but it's actually really lame. And I thought, off the top of my head, I can come up with something that's still kind of lame, but much cooler. And so I threw out Dragon Squad, and I just moved on with my life. But everybody liked it, and so they kept it going, and so we've embraced it. And I think again, this was during the period of the pandemic. I think it was sort of nice to have a renewed sense of community, a feeling that you're a part of something when everything seems so chaotic. And as a result of that, we've got independent artists online streaming, making beautiful digital art of dragons. We've got, we've released a number of pieces of merchandise that people love sending us photos of them. And then, by the way, for me personally, people send me, like you can probably see in the background, like a knitted dragon someone sent me. There's a dragon book they sent me, dragon board games they send me. People have done like custom ironworks, making dragon bottle openers. Like the fans are super invested in diamond art and things like that. And so it's great that they send this stuff. Sometime we're gonna have to set up a wall of all of it. But yeah, it's definitely brought the community a lot closer together. The fact that we were no longer in this big studio, I felt a lot more personally attached to people. It felt very immediate. And I know that I personally needed the connection.
This guy, Hassan Piker.
All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, Elliott Morgan with you guys. Elliott's also on Rebel HQ, make sure you're checking that out. All right, we got a lot to get to, so I'm gonna fire away here. Let's go to the next story.
But for Republicans to not own the affordability problem that Americans are suffering right now is a problem. They need to acknowledge that that happened, and that happened under the last presidency. But now we've got to own it. We've got to bring, you know what she's talking to those voters about right now? In their front yards? She's talking about state guaranteed paid leave. She's talking about raising the minimum wage to $20 an hour. Do you know what that's going to do to small businesses? How many people that's going to put out of work? A 1-year moratorium on new AI data center construction. She wants to raise income taxes on couples making just over $400,000 a year. So these are the solutions she's offering at a very sensitive time for this affordability moment. But Republicans, beware. Don't let them keep owning this affordability message when the numbers clearly show these prices ran up under the last administration, and the onus is on Republicans to get them back down come midterm elections.
That was both telling and hilarious at the same time. She's like, now Republicans, don't let Democrats own affordability. It turns out the poor's care about it. And the middle class care about it. I mean, we didn't know that because we're all multimillionaires paid off by Rupert Murdoch to rob you guys blind and hand it over to corporate PACs and foreign governments. But it turns out people care about affordability. And then she says, now all the things that Hong and other Democrats are doing on affordability, they're terrible and you shouldn't do any of them. So let's just trick people into voting for us, even though we would do the exact opposite of helping them. Well, we appreciate the heads up. Thank you for the confession on Fox News there, but Elliott's got more on this.
Yeah, so according to the Trump administration, not only is everything getting more affordable, but also what really Americans should be worrying about is what else? Communism. Here's Caroline Leavitt.
Thanks to President Trump and Republicans and common sense policies across the board, our country is safer, our country is more affordable. We cannot allow these radical, extreme, far left liberals to take power. We have steady progress under President Trump right now. If these radical, extreme liberals are given a chance at power here in Washington, D.C., they will try to obstruct this president and turn our country into a communist hellhole with every extreme liberal policy that they try to implement.
Yeah, don't be worried about that actual problem. Be worried about the problem we kind of just made up in our heads. And also Caroline Leavitt there is saying that Trump has made life more affordable for Americans. And this comes after Trump told Fox News last week, I inherited very, very high costs and they're all coming down now. The food, the groceries, it's all coming down. We've done a great job. You know, I think we should be given an A+ on the economy, but I think that's coming. People are starting to talk about it. Sure, Grandpa, I'm sure people are talking about it, but over here in what is referred to as reality, it's not all coming down and it's not even close. Louis Jacobson at PolitiFact wrote, with a few exceptions, prices have gone up since Trump began his second term in January 2025. Official federal data shows. In many cases, the picture for consumer prices has worsened since PolitiFact looked at this question in January, partially because the price of gasoline has risen since the start of the Iran war in late February. In addition to hitting commuters' wallets, higher prices at the pump also affect the cost of many consumer goods that need to be transported. So what is getting cheaper? Well, eggs, bacon, bread, and cars. What is getting more expensive? Yeah, pretty much everything else, including coffee, ground beef, steak, fruits and vegetables, tuition and childcare, electricity, housing, and on and on and on. Nothing important. Also, as for inflation, that's not looking good either. So PolitiFact noted that the spike in inflation is, like the rising gas prices, a result of the ongoing war with Iran. Also, speaking of gas prices, also not looking super good. They've gone up 34% since Trump went back into the White House. Also, it is not just gas itself. Fuel oil is up 24%. Natural gas is up 12%. Electricity is up 8%. So while people may be saying that Trump deserves an A+ in the economy, PolitiFact rated his statement that it's all coming down as, you're not gonna believe it, mostly false. Cenk, I'm shocked, I'm flabbergasted. I'm taken aback truly that our dear leader would say something that is mostly false to his people. But also I'm reminded of the George Orwell quote where he said, the party told you not to believe the evidence of your eyes and your ears. It was their final most essential command. And I don't know why that pops into my head, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, that's because they're telling you, please don't look at the prices.
Oh, that.
Right, and if you look at the prices, remember they're lying to you. It's actually cheaper. I did that at the grocery store here in LA. It's called Ralph's, and I went to Ralph's and I was like, I think Donald Trump is right, and your prices are actually lower, so I'm only gonna pay less. And they were like, oh, you're right, you caught us, and I paid less.
Oh, that's right.
Or maybe that didn't happen at all because those are the actual prices, okay? Yeah. So look, the one thing that is really hard to lie about is the economy. So, you know, Joe Biden, when he was in charge, kept telling you that inflation wasn't that bad. People didn't believe him, you know why? Because inflation was significant, okay? And you could say, hey, you know what? Israel is our greatest ally, and you need to support them, and they're, you know, just the most beautiful people, and they're almost all gonna be killed, whatever, right? And you're not in Tel Aviv, you're not in Gaza. So in the old days before social media, television blocked all the news in that regard. So how do you know, right? So you might believe that, right? And that's true of really any foreign policy, supporting Ukraine, supporting Saudi Arabia. How do you know? You don't live in Riyadh, right? So, and there's many other things, oil subsidies. They say you need to give them $35 billion a year. Now that sounds stupid and obviously wrong. Why do they need your money? They're already super profitable, right? But they say, oh, we gotta drill, baby, drill, and then your gas prices are gonna be lower. And maybe you don't know cause and effect, a little bit harder to track. But when you go to the grocery store, there's no negotiating. I know what the Fruity Pebbles cost. I know what it cost before, I know what it costs now. I know what the gas cost before, I know what it costs now. So you can try to BS me all day long, but I got eyes and ears, and I actually have to take money out of my pocket to pay it, right? So that's why the first clip from Fox News is so funny. She's like, oh, they caught us. Okay, they caught us in 4K, and it turns out we can't trick them on this one. So we should trick them in a different way. Let's pretend that the people trying to address this issue are the bad guys, and then Caroline Leavitt comes in with a parting shot. She's leaving the White House. It's not that interesting a story. She just had a kid. But she comes in and she's like, wait. Let me do some doozies at the end here. It's gonna be a communist hellhole if you actually care about gas prices. Why would that turn us in? We had lower gas prices before. Were we a communist hellhole then? No, this is just absurd. And guys, they can't get out of the 1950s, right? Remember, most of the Republicans and Democrats that are in charge today grew up in like the 1850s. Like they're ancient, they're like 280 years old, right? So to them, they're like, oh, the communists are gonna take over. Oh my God, the communists, I heard they're gonna kill us all and they're gonna nuke us from Moscow, right? Bro, which communists? What are you talking about? What, is Cuba gonna take over? Are Democrats gonna win and then open the gates for North Korea? And then they're gonna swarm in and this is insane. Nobody thinks the communists are gonna take over. Like that's only gonna work on people who are 89 and older, who remember hiding under their desk in the 1950s, right? So the rest of us don't care about your super stupid talking point about communists. Now, once you get past that, then you wanna have a real debate about, hey, where do we go, guys? Do we do Medicare for all? Is that gonna actually save us money like the Yale study that just came out says that it's gonna save us $1 trillion? Or do I think it's gonna cost us money? That's a legitimate debate. Like, let's have that debate. What's gonna lower gas prices? Doing X or Y or Z? Okay, that's a legitimate debate, right? But saying you're a communist is a little bit like when the Democrats said you're a fascist, right? And remember, if you're a Republican, how much you hated that? Or if you're an independent, right? What are you just calling me names and it's not even what I am at all? What is this? Now the Republicans think, oh, remember that dumbass strategy the Democrats lost with?
Yeah,
let's adopt it instead of take out fascists and put in communists and we'll win.
Literally the exact same strategy, which I do find it kind of entertaining. Also, to your point as well, it's minimum wage. Like when Sander on Fox News is talking about affordability and then scoffing at all of these potential solutions, like increasing the minimum wage. Yeah, I'm not saying that's not gonna be a complicated thing. At the same time, what's your alternative? Because if you look at the graph of compensation versus productivity has been on the rise since forever, basically, and we're more productive than we've ever been, and we always have been more productive than we ever have been as American workers. But compensation has flatlined since the late 70s because we hitched our wagon to neoliberal capitalism. And so what are you gonna do to put money back in people's pockets that they actually earned? And also, I'm not sensing a lot of actually wanting to help working class people in that sentiment. It sounds to me like the end of the whole point is simply to continue winning elections and not get creamed in the midterms.
So I gotta tell you guys one other thing. So for God's sake, again, wherever you are on the political spectrum, don't get stuck on the labels. Oh, that person is again a fascist, a socialist, whatever it is. No. What's your policy? What is your actual position? What do you want to do about minimum wage, for example, right? And so along those lines, if you haven't heard of middle out economics, look it up. A great advocate for it is Nick Hanauer, but there's many advocates for it. And Nick is an incredibly successful entrepreneur, and he's, to be honest, quite wealthy, right? And what he's saying is, don't give the money to us, because rich people save the money. Exactly. They don't put it back in the economy. Give the money to the middle class in different ways, right? But like helping them with childcare, helping them with college debt, etc. If you give it to the middle class, since they have less money overall, they have to spend it right away because they got to pay the rent, they got to pay the mortgage, they got to pay their student debt, etc. And it gets put back into the economy and juices the economy and is way better at lifting all boats. In fact, that's exactly what we did when we built the greatest middle class the world has ever seen. Between World War II and Ronald Reagan, that is when the greatest middle class in the history of the world was built on those middle out policies. And from Reagan on, they switched to trickle down economics. We're gonna give all the money to the rich. We're literally gonna take your money and we're gonna give it to the richest people in the world. Oil subsidies, perfect example, because the oil companies are literally some of the wealthiest, most profitable companies in the world and in the history of the world. And every year, $35 billion we have to pay out of our taxes and give it to the oil companies for free. Why? It's nothing but a robbery, a flat out robbery, right? So that's what you have to be concerned about. So don't give it to ExxonMobil, are you nuts? And then they say, oh no, it's okay, ExxonMobil later is gonna trickle down on you. I don't want anybody trickling on me, okay? I don't need it. What I need is middle out economics. You wanna call it something else, I don't care. And guys, they keep trying to scare you. Like, for example, I call myself a capitalist because I'm a capitalist. Ro Khanna, Abdul El Said, these are all people who say, no, we're capitalists. But what we don't want is corporatism, where corporations take over your government and say, don't give it to the average American, give everything to us. And that's the system we actually live under. All right, we're out of time on this one. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about, this story about Trump and how he didn't mind getting a whole bunch of people killed on a different plane when he thought that plane might blow up. That's an amazing story. And there's a couple of nuggets in there that I really want you guys to know. So come right back.
A plus, 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 plus.
This is a robbery!
All right, let's go to Super Chat. Balk says, Minnesota understood this, Simon. So proud of us. Even the conservatives swerved Mike Pillow, win-win. Yeah, Mike Pillow lost, and all the progressives won in Minnesota. Friendly Shark Dragon says, we really have to remember that most of the money is not going to Israel. It is our military-industrial complex that is getting rich from this, as Eisenhower warned. If they didn't support it, it wouldn't happen. So that is largely right. So Israel does get the money. They just then purchase weapons from us, and they were going to purchase those weapons no matter what. So that's why it's kind of fungible. So if they're not spending the $4 billion on purchasing our weapons, instead we're gifting it to them, they spend it on healthcare instead, and that's part of why they have universal healthcare and we don't, right? So, but you are definitely right that the defense contractors are a huge lobby, and it's not just the Israeli lobby, it's both of those lobbies coming together to say give everything to Israel so that it goes to the defense contractors. Israel's super happy, the defense contractors are happy, and the rest of us are robbed. Schrodinger's Dragon says, no opinions today, my brain isn't braining. I just wanted to donate to a great cause. Love you, brother, and I believe in your brain. So Jessica Smith writes in, I have a brain tumor and it has to come out next week. And I had to beg my job for time off and not to cancel my health insurance. I worked there for 3 years and also in the medical field. This is the brutal conditions under which we live. And so they might cancel her insurance, they might fire her because she's out with a brain tumor, and then our system says go die somewhere. That's not normal, man. And that's not humane, that's not American. We have to get money out of politics so that we end all of this.
This is a robbery!
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Elliott with you guys, but also Curtis Lewis and Suppawash. So those American heroes, hit the join button below on YouTube. We appreciate you guys. You could also upgrade through that button, and we need it now more than ever. We're totally besieged. Basically, you're the only guys we have left on our side. We love you and appreciate you. So if you can, join through there or through tyt.com/join. Then meanwhile, we try to help you out with our sponsors because I think they're really good for you, and we do a lot of research to make sure we're getting you the best guys. And so I want to tell you about Chapter today. So we hate scams of all sorts, especially on Medicare, because that targets senior citizens, and unfortunately, it's that industry is full of them. So you got commission-hungry brokers steering people toward whatever pays the broker the most, not what's best for you. So that's why we're recommending a company called Chapter to you guys, because we did our research. They're independent Medicare advisors, the only ones that compare every plan nationwide. And the best plan for you is out there, and Chapter is gonna help you find it. People who switched with Chapter last year saved an average of $1,100. That is a lot of money to save every year. Chapter's advisors are honest. They're not paid to just steer you to certain plans. That's the important part. So it's not based on commission like that. They work for you, not big insurance. We know we have a lot of people who called them, and if they had the best plan already, they told them to stick with it, even though they didn't make any money from it. So that proves their honesty, right? Among other things. So it's free. It takes under 20 minutes. Skip the scams and call Chapter today, 805-201-2275. For Medicare help you can trust, that's 805-201-2275. All right, hope that helps, guys. All right, now let's go to the next story.
The thing here that's a little disturbing is that if the president if they needed to take such extraordinary steps to protect the president because the threat level was so high, the American people deserve to know that the threat level was that high in this particular case, that he had to take such an extraordinary measure. And then the other piece of it is that in fact everyone on that plane was a decoy. If they felt that it was unsafe to be on the plane, then it was unsafe for everybody else to be on the plane as well. So they at least deserve to know, if not then after, why this was happening.
So that's talking about the decoy plane that Trump used, and he filled a plane that might get hit, well, at least that's what they thought at the time, with reporters. And by the way, some of his own staff. So who was on the decoy plane, we'll tell you that. And was the threat real? Well, that depends on where we got the information. Well, we have info on that as well. But one of the things we want to discuss here as we tell you all the facts in this case is just think about how Donald Trump cared so much about protecting his own life, but didn't care one lick about the people on the other plane. Because he thought the threat was real, that plane might get blown up. And he didn't mind leaving those people on there, which is amazing. Elliott, tell us about it.
Yeah, it's quite the elaborate ruse that Trump pulled off here. So if you can recall, Trump used his new Air Force One, gifted to him, of course, by Qatar, to get to Turkey. But it was announced during the summit that Trump would use the former Air Force One to come back. The security of the new aircraft came into question, and the administration stated it needed to undergo more upgrades. In Ankara, Trump boarded the old Air Force One jumbo jet in view of television cameras. He was secretly shuttled minutes later to a smaller plane, an Air Force C-32A, via an airport catering truck typically used to load meals and other supplies pre-flight, according to the US official and corroborating material reviewed by the Post. That made Air Force One a decoy with media and some White House staff aboard, the official said. And luckily, we do in fact have some footage of Trump escaping the Air Force One jet and sneaking into a catering truck.
President Trump was seen boarding Air Force One at 8:24 p.m. local time on July 8th. But actually, according to the Post, and you can see here, Trump and several of his aides were secretly shuttled minutes later onto this airport catering truck, which was elevated and positioned at a door out of the view of the cameras. Now, the Post reports that the president was on that catering truck when it pulled away from Air Force One at 8:30 p.m., secretly bringing him to a smaller plane, an Air Force C-32A, making the Air Force One that everyone thought he was on a decoy that still had the reporters who thought the president had boarded that plane, and who you see boarding right here on the right, and some White House staff aboard. The Washington Post reports, and I quote, "The maneuver meant that the president's actual location was concealed from the American public and many senior US officials for hours."
So the planes take off and they later land in the UK, and this initiates phase 2 of the ruse, getting Trump back onto Air Force One so that he can exit Air Force One.
Now, it's still not clear, as the Post notes tonight, how the president was transported from that other secret plane back onto Air Force One after it landed. You see here, the reporters captured the president getting off the plane that they thought he had just flown on with them to the UK, and he's seen coming down the stairs just before 11 p.m. After greeting American service members on the tarmac, Trump got on the new Air Force One jet. That's the one that was given to the president by the Qatari government. And then he flew back to Washington. Now, the plane that he's getting on here is not to be confused with the old Air Force One decoy or the military plane that he flew on secretly. But it was when the president got back on this plane to fly home to the US that he was asked by reporters why they had been told to lower their window shades on that first flight, which is extremely unusual and not typically something that happens for the press that sits on the right side of the plane, which is where that airport catering truck was, now that you look back at that other video. But given what we know now, given the pictures that you can see now, it makes what the president told reporters in that gaggle afterward all the more noteworthy.
Yeah, and when the press asked Trump why the folks on Air Force One had to lower their window blinds, he said, because you were on a dangerous flight.
Do you know why they had us close our window blinds? That was not usual. Well, yeah, because you're, probably on a dangerous flight because of the sleaze bags that we have to deal with. So you think that Iran was possibly thinking, trying? Well, I mean, if they asked you to close your windows, probably they feel that way. They didn't ask me to close mine, but if they did, I would have done it.
Were you aware of any credible threat by Iran against Air Force One?
Well, I have a threat all the time. I'm number one on their list before you. But if I go, you go, right?
But was there a specific threat today?
Perhaps someday you want to change professions.
Okay, so I guess in Trump's mind, that's just the price you're willing to pay if you decide to be a journalist reporting on the president. Among those on the smaller jet was Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who boarded the C-32A using external stairs in a manner that made him look like the senior-most official on the flight, the Post reported Monday. But here's the thing, while the initial Washington Post report stated Trump left White House staff and the press pool to be decoys, an update later revealed that he actually did take some people with him on his secret flight, a select few of his most loyal aides that you've probably not heard of. Other passengers on the truck included Dan Scavino, the White House Deputy Chief of Staff, Natalie Harp, the president's executive assistant, and Walt Nauta, the director of Oval Office operations, according to a US official familiar with the operation and corroborating material reviewed by the Washington Post. A few lower profile aides were also present, but the group did not include Secretary of State Marco Rubio or other officials at the highest level of government, according to the official and the material. But of course, Trump was the one at greater risk, and so he just, left his cabinet and maybe some US journalists to fend for themselves after he just resumed hostilities with Iran. So, Cenk, I am reminded of the scene from the movie Titanic when the ship is going down and the captain sneaks onto a catering truck. So, what are your thoughts?
I was wondering where you were going with that.
You know that.
So I couldn't understand. Was Rubio on the decoy plane or the safe plane? It sounded like maybe he was on the decoy plane.
Yeah, he's on decoy. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I have a theory on that. I'll come back to. So first off, Trump said there, "Well, if I go, you go." It turns out that wasn't true. He was on the other plane earlier. So the plane that was more likely to be bombed was the reporters. So if they had gone, he would have been fine. And that was the whole point. Like, because remember, if he just switches planes, they still know which plane he's on, right? So he has to pretend he's on the decoy plane, which by definition endangers the people on the decoy plane. And they're like, and if you guys get killed, who cares? Because if you go, I don't go. And that's Donald Trump in a nutshell right there. I don't agree with Axelrod when he says the public has a right to know. We have a right to know maybe afterwards. But no, you don't have to publicize that, hey, the president is under threat and he's right there. No, you don't have to do that, right? On the other hand, when he says, but the people on the decoy plane have a right to know, oh yeah, that's definitely true. It's totally, I mean, if you're on the plane, imagine they put your kids on the decoy plane, they put you or your wife or your husband on the decoy plane. Nah, that's crazy, right? And it shows massive indifference to their lives. So now, the good news is we got this intelligence about how Iran is about to kill Trump from Israel. So that means it's fake. Israel was trying to get Trump anger. Oh, the Iranians are looking to kill you, and oh, it's super credible. Oh, they have a shoulder-fired RPG. They're any second you're going to die. Remember, it said attack Iran, attack them more, attack, right? So that's why my theory on Rubio being on the decoy plane, he's like, oh, we got it from Israeli intelligence as a guy who's Israeli first, right? Marco Rubio has gotten millions upon millions of dollars from the Israeli lobby. He knows the intelligence is fake. So he's like, oh, the Israelis gave us intelligence. Now I'll go on the decoy plane. I'm good.
It's a good.
They're not going to hit us.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there's situations that maybe the public shouldn't know about when it comes to the security of the president. I totally respect that. At the same time, when stories like this come out, they're just so goofy that it reminds me of an episode of Veep, and it does make me question exactly what we're doing as a nation and a world. So,
yeah. So I mean, it is funny because of all the, the trickery and all that, but. Again, I'm stuck on the guys on the decoy plane because they thought it was real. Like the Secret Service, the security for the government, they all thought it was totally real, which is kind of comical. I mean, Israeli intelligence is literally never correct. They'll always give you intelligence to make you attack their enemies. It's so. At this late date, I can't believe we take those liars seriously. But they did, and they thought, oh my God, the president's in mortal danger. We've got to move out and make sure that the other White House officials and the reporters are in mortal danger instead. Yep. And I can't get past how immoral that is.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's funny to like laugh about, but also I cannot imagine being in that situation. It is potentially one of the most terrifying situations you can possibly imagine yourself in anyway. And the fact that they asked Trump about it and he was just like, oh yeah, well actually your lives were in danger. I mean, it's easy in hindsight to go like, oh, here's probably what was going on. But in the moment, I don't know what was going through their heads. And it's an act of cowardice at the end of the day.
Oh, you know what, one last quick thing, because I thought so I run the company here, right? I founded it and we've been doing this for a long time. And so we got a lot of folks who work here. Imagine if I thought, hey, somebody might be looking to harm me and I've got real intelligence and we switch cars, right? I pretend to be in one car and I go, and then the car, the decoy car, I'm like, Elliott, you're going in the decoy car and Craig and Bart, you're, okay, yeah, and you know what? And you find out later, right? No, I don't tell you at the time, but you find out later that you thought that I believed that you guys might die, and I put you in the car anyway.
Yeah,
like you got to be like, what in the God's green are you?
Thanks,
because
man.
There's people who work at the White House who got put on the decoy plane, right? What do they think afterwards? Oh, Trump was willing to let me die. Isn't that crazy? I mean, how furious would you be?
Yeah, you have to close. Why are we closing our blinds in the middle of a flight? Oh well, because your life is in danger. Okay, cool. Thank you, Mr. President. It's good stuff.
Well, at least the president's on the plane, so no, he's not. No, we got him to safety. It's only your life that's on the line. It's disgusting. Okay, all right. Another break. When we come back, we got a fight that broke out. Between a pro-Israel podcaster and an anti-Israel podcaster, it got weird, and I'm a little worried about where things are headed, but let's show it to you when we come back and talk about why I'm worried. We'll be right back.
Cenk Uygur has the morality of a cockroach.
All right, back on TOT. Dave Mills says on Super Chat, Adam Smith, the more government subsidizes something, the higher the cost, lower the quality, and more the corruption, less the accountability. So yes, it is not, by the way, a capitalist position or a conservative or a right-wing position to be in favor of subsidies. I mean, that's like, subsidies are not right-wing at all. Yet, Republicans love subsidies. They love taking money from the donors and then subsidizing all of their corporations. So and yet everyone in media is like, what is right-wing position? I do not know. What is capitalism? I thought it was to take your money and give it to really rich people and big corporations. I don't know, I am a reporter. Anyway, Eindrat writes in the YouTube member section, I pay my taxes for my country and for my life to build a better life for my children. I will not pay taxes if the money goes to wars that are not ours and a genocidal regime who kills babies. I mean, who can blame you, right? But the government will blame you, and then they'll come and take your freedom away because you dare to defy Israel. Your money is theirs, and if you don't give them your money, you're an anti-Semite. Adam Hobson says, how much money do you think the Israeli government paid Flock for access to their cameras and database? I mean, they love surveillance, so putting us in a surveillance state would be their move. I don't know if they have to pay or if like Jonathan Greenblatt just goes and sends in spies and just takes the technology, etc. I mean, they've stolen everything from us, our nuclear weapon technology, our uranium, our nuclear triggers. So I don't know if they have to pay for it. Solo Rick says, the West Bank's a mess. Palestinians are forcibly pushed out and we cannot do anything. Gaza's down to 30% and the new prime minister said he would push back against Israel. Trump let Americans down.
Cenk Uygur has the morality of a cockroach.
I said,
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Elliott with you guys. If you can, or if you're interested, collect more AIPAC tiers since AIPAC lost a couple of really important elections last night at shoptyt.com, where we've got the AIPAC tiers mug. Now, let's do our next story.
I'm right next to you. I'm right next to you.
That's the thing.
I'm right next to you. I can do whatever the hell I want. Here. What's going on? How you doing?
Guys, seriously, let's not be.
He's like a foot shorter than me.
Hang on.
He's like a foot shorter than me. You're a bitch. You're a bitch. You kill children. You just admitted to it. You kill children. You ordered children to be killed. You know what? Most people would beat your ass in America.
All right, things got ugly there. So on the one side was a dude named Def Noodles, because that's where we are as a country. And he was actually, I think, relatively the good guy, although he did start it a little bit there. We'll discuss who's right and wrong in a second. His real name is Dennis Fiotza. He's a YouTuber turned Republican candidate. The other guy is a former IDF officer, the little feller, Yosef Haddad. And he continued to provoke both inside the studio and outside the studio. I'm worried about where this is headed, but we're gonna show you more from this crazy fight and talk about why we're worried about it. Elliott.
Yeah, and if you're like me and you had no idea who Def Noodles is, he was a popular pop culture and influencer drama content creator, but due to controversy involving clashes he had with other creators, along with the disastrous attempt at being a stand-up comedian and maybe some erratic online behavior, he eventually took his channels offline. However, like a phoenix rising from the ashes, he's making headlines recently after a video was released of Fiotza getting into a physical altercation with Israeli advocate Yosef Haddad. Per Jewish publication Forward.com, Fiotza, who unsuccessfully ran as a Republican for California's 30th congressional district, was one of 10 anti-Israel activists scheduled to debate Haddad for an episode of the Digital Social Hour, a long-form podcast that features unfiltered conversations with controversial figures. Haddad is one of Israel's most prominent advocates and among the small minority of Arab citizens who voluntarily served in the Israel Defense Forces. Freudian slip. Born in Haifa and raised in Nazareth, Haddad is a Palestinian Arab citizen of Israel who identifies strongly as Israeli. Since the beginning of Israel's genocidal war on Gaza, Haddad has traveled internationally defending Israeli policies, challenging accusations of apartheid and genocide, and campaigning against the BDS movement and other forms of Palestine solidarity. So despite running as a Republican, Fiotza has expressed extreme opposition to Israel's actions in Gaza. And as you saw in that cold open, Fiotza was really getting into it with Haddad, calling him a, quote, genocidal effing freak who's killed children. But after the filming, the fighting also escalated and got even more physical outside.
Genocidal freak? You bombed kids, and you need two people to hold me back.
Trying to fight you, idiot. Stop, come on. That's your husband, right? That's your husband stuffing rocks in his fist. Get away from my face. Stop. That's your husband. That's it. Look at this guy. Stuffing rocks in his fist. If he hits me. You too. Stop. Hey.
Now, obviously, no one here at TYT condones violence of any kind, and also the debate has not been posted online yet. However, the two have shared basically diametrically opposed versions on the altercation online. So Yosef wrote on X, "I was attacked by a groyper in the US. He just didn't realize he had picked a Golani soldier. I came today to take part in a film debate against a group of anti-Israel activists, with the person debating me constantly changing. At one point, a man who was clearly a groyper came up against me. Even in the studio, he started cursing and turning the argument into a physical confrontation. After the filming, in the parking lot, he managed to attack me from behind, but very quickly, he realized that he effed up, because when it comes to anti-Israel attacks, we don't stay silent. He picked the wrong guy. This isn't anything new. When they can't win a verbal debate, they turn to physical confrontation, which they lose as well." Now, Feitosa was not holding back either in person or online. He said, "This self-admitted child killer hid behind his security, and now he's desperately trying to spin the confrontation as some courageous stand. This after spending hours lecturing Americans on why he believes he's morally justified in bombing schools. This is the IDF, this is Zionism. They demand America's money, America's weapons, and America's loyalty, then treat Americans with contempt for daring to question them. They don't respect America, and they don't respect you." Feitosa also uploaded a video to his reestablished YouTube channel to explain in more depth his interpretation of the events. First, he explained the lead up to his debate with Haddad.
This guy had already spent pretty much 3 hours debating other people before he got to me. I think there were about 10 other people who debated him. I was one of the last. I was supposed to be the last, but somebody else ended up going up after me. And needless to say, for 3 hours, this man was basically screaming at everybody he spoke to. The level of disrespect is something I have never witnessed myself firsthand until I saw this man talking to my fellow Americans about why we should support Israel unconditionally. In fact, one of the topics that kept coming up was whether the IDF is justified in bombing schools. And across the board, whenever somebody challenged him on this, he verbally abused them in a way that was relatively unsettling. He called them Nazis, he cursed them out. At certain points, he refused to even look people in the face and would only address the host of the show, who was sitting off to the side. He would scream and curse at people sitting in the background. Overall, it was an extremely toxic and abusive environment. He would very often engage in what I'm describing as fighting words.
But after an already heated start to their debate, things escalated after Feitosa asked Haddad if he ordered strikes on schools during his time as an IDF commander.
I heard him mention earlier in another debate that he was an IDF soldier. So I asked him, how many people did you kill in the IDF? Did you give orders to kill people? And if I remember this accurately, he said yes, or something to that effect. Finally, I asked him whether he had ordered a strike on a school. Again, he puts his head down, avoids answering, and deflects. And at that moment, I'm like, in my head, oh man, this guy definitely ordered a bomb on a school. So I start laying into him, and he gets pissed off. And that escalates the language he was using even further, because now he's not just using what I would describe as fighting words. Now he has an emotional reason to push it even further. He's pissed off, and that's when things escalate to the next level. At which point I'm like, okay, bet. I get up, take off my jacket, walk over and put my arm around his shoulder. And from there, things went off the rails. I have my own opinion about what happened, and obviously I was walking a very fine line in that situation, but people are going to watch the footage and interpret it differently. The internet is already extremely divided over who instigated this and who didn't. I believe he was instigating based on everything that happened beforehand. I believe this was the outcome he wanted, because as we've seen, this is the kind of stuff he does. He's a rage baiter, he's a provocateur. He goes around the world instigating confrontations and then paints himself as a victim afterwards. That's his whole shtick.
So Feitosa there is referring to Haddad's decision to counter-protest the pro-Palestinian protests, which led to one protester punching Haddad, leading to the arrest of another protester who didn't touch Haddad. And Haddad has also allegedly harassed Palestinian students at Tel Aviv University and called for their expulsion. Feitosa stated he's not claiming to be the victim in this situation, and Haddad stated on X he has filed a police report against Feitosa. No arrests seemingly have been made yet, and again, the full debate has not been uploaded yet, so we do not know the full context of this situation. Cenk, there's a lot to unpack here. On one side, you have the battle of the dorks. On the other side, you have the substance of the actual argument. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm gonna start in a funny place. So he's an Arab Israeli, but you see how culture is so dominant. So it's not about religion by definition, right? He's not Jewish. I don't know if he has a religion, but he's Arab. But he lives inside Israeli culture, and he has adopted it 100%. So he feels entitled to say anything he wants. He feels apparently entitled to kill kids and thinks that's perfectly normal and they had it coming. And he feels entitled to instigate, and then if you strike back, to cry as victim, which is Israel 101, right? I'm gonna push you and push you and push you, and then if you push back a little bit, oh, I'm a victim, right? So that's very classic. But at the end of the day, in this particular case, from my view of those videos that we just watched, I think Feitosa is the one who got physical first, and that's wrong. Don't do that. Number one, you're giving him what he wants, and that's dumb strategy, right? Number two, it's not the right thing to do. That's more important, right? Because being physical isn't gonna solve any of this. And you think the Israelis mind being physical? They're gonna go for an unfair advantage immediately and then brag about it. That's literally what happened there. I mean, he's like, oh, he messed with a Golani soldier. Bro, there was 3 of you, right? So he goads you, you fall for it, and then 3 of them tackle you. So what did you gain out of that? Again, strategically and morally, it's the wrong thing to do. So in terms of like who's right about the debate, that's not close. Of course Feitosa is right. Like, oh yeah, we should give all our money to Israel to kill kids. How is that a debate? That's why Haddad has to try to rage bait people and try to distract people and say, oh, it's all your fault and we're the victim. And if you noticed, I mean, I watched all the tapes outside. He's constantly calling deaf noodles. And it sounds funny every time, sorry. I mean, and I got a funny name, so it doesn't, like Glass House. But anyways, he's constantly calling him a neo-Nazi. So if you don't agree with Israel, you're a neo-Nazi, right? And so, but guys, don't give them what they want. So don't make it physical, because then everything's gonna devolve. And by the way, one last part of that, if you do that, what they're gonna do is they're gonna go cry to mommy, which is the FBI and the US government and the cops, and then they're gonna do a surveillance state and crack down on all of us, and they're gonna go to direct oppression because, oh my God, I don't feel safe. And in that case, if you're touching them, that's true. Don't do that, right? Elliott, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're both just like self-interested dorks. Again, I think this is influencer culture, and I can agree with Deaf Noodles in terms of maybe his policy on Israel. What I disagree with, I think, is the values informing that policy. This seems like an effort to go viral and an effort to increase engagement. And I don't know what good that does when it comes to the genocide in Gaza, when it comes to the apartheid state of Israel, to use that as a way to bolster yourself. So I don't think either of them are in the right here. I don't think that, bracketing off the Israel issue, I think Deaf Noodles, from what I understand, I'm pretty much diametrically opposed to him politically, but at the end of the day, I don't want to see this at all. Like, this is just a couple boys trying to have a tussle and see how many eyeballs they can get on them, rather than the actual issues that are important, that are still ongoing right now. So
yeah, and of course, at the end of the day, the most important thing is the genocide. There's over 76,000 dead there, and that's what Haddad is bragging about. And he doesn't even have the decency to feel any kind of guilt or compunction over it.
And it does show too that there is a bipartisan kind of through line as well with the issue of Israel, especially like with younger generations. And I'm very curious to see how that transpires over the coming years, because I don't know that can be put in the bottle right now. And that, I think, also shows how atrocious Israel's actions have been, that people who I completely disagree with and people who I am aligned with all agree on Israel, so long as we're not 85 years old.
Yes, and plus Haddad's a sellout bitch. Okay, we gotta go, but we do have a bonus episode coming up for you guys next. And Ro Khanna versus data centers, so that's a big fight. And then things have gotten so bad on our aircraft carriers, our soldiers are literally, or in that case, Navy seamen, funny every time, sorry, are jumping off of the boats, like literally jumping into the water. Unbelievable. So hit the join button below or tyt.com/join, and we're gonna have those stories for you guys when we return.